Braun here with your Acrylic Painting Techniques Workshop tutorial. I'm going to teach you how to get your paint, how to use your paint using 9 beautiful acrylic paint techniques, and how to clean up your paint. Let's get started. You're going to need a lid, these little plastic lids that you see in Mrs. Cantronmai's room. You're going to need a paper towel that you're going to get wet, and you're going to squeeze out all the excess water, and then you are going to uncrumple your paper towel and lay it flat on your tray. This is going to become your palette. You're going to take your paint, which might come in a container like this or might come in a container in this. Make sure the lid is on and kind of shake all the paint down to the bottom, and you're going to squeeze out a dime-sized paint blob. Another measuring tool is like the size of your thumb. Less paint is better. You can always go back and get more. All right, I have my paint all set up. A couple of tips I have for you guys. When you are using a paintbrush, it is very important that you hold very close to the tip. It allows you to have more control. And when you're putting paint on your brush, even though this is a big brush, you might be tempted to put paint all the way, back here. Only put a little bit of paint on the very tippity top of your brush, because that's where your brush touches the surface of the papers, on the tip, not on the bottom. You guys are cleaning your brushes. Make sure that you're swishing all the way to the bottom. You're swiping on the edge to get that excess water off, and you're wiping on your paper towel. Swish, swipe, and wipe. Fully dry your paintbrush after washing. So you're also going to need a dry paper towel with your mug of water, and you're going to want to always make sure to super dry your acrylic paint so that it's used the best. It is optional to wear an apron because acrylic paint is permanent. If it gets on your clothes, it is going to stain them and stay. For layered paintings that you want to put a lot of acrylic paint on, make sure you do thin application, let the layers dry in between. All right, let's get started. The first technique that we're going to be learning about is called dry brushing. So this is when you really want to get that paintbrush super dry. And you're going to get just a tiny bit of paint. I like to load my paintbrush up on both sides, but see how I only used a portion of the brush? Then this seems kind of counterproductive, but you're going to actually dry off that paintbrush on the paper over here. So there's very little paint, and I'm just going to very lightly brush over my dry brush square. You guys can go outside the lines too, it doesn't matter. So if I want a little bit of a more intense color, then I would maybe not dab so much, but the whole point is to have really light, feathery strokes just across the surface of your paper. All right, for wash, you're going to use a ton of water, and on your palette, you're going to put a kind of a good blob of water. Take a little bit of paint, again, only the tip of my brush, and I'm going to kind of take that paint right into the water. So I'm basically essentially making watercolor. And when I put that on my wash, it ends up looking like watercolor. So you can always make your wash a little bit darker by adding a little bit more paint into it, like so. You can also directly apply some paint to your paper, and if you work quickly and take just some straight water, you can also create a wash directly on the paper. I think that technique's a little bit more difficult, and your paper gets really absorbent with the water, so I prefer this method. Next, we have color blending. So the key with color blending, so I have white and I have blue here, is to create some sort of color in between what you're trying to mix on the palette. So I'm going to take a little bit of the white, and I'm going to mix in a little bit of the blue, and kind of make my in-between color. And the key with color blending is it's really important to have all 3 colors that you're working with when you're doing the blending be wet so that they're able to work into each other. So at the top, I'm going to take a little bit of my blue. I'm going to do like maybe a third of the box blue. I'm going to go directly in and take some of that medium color, and I'm going to brush a little bit of the medium color on its own, and then watch how I work back into my wet blue to create a blend. Then I'm going to keep my brush a little bit dirty, and I'm going to go into the white, leave a little bit of the white, and then I'm going to work that white back up into that blue. And if any point I don't see a good transition, I just take a little bit more of that paint and kind of work it in. Blending is all about give and take and kind of pushing back and forth with your colors. Impasto, I want to show you guys the one I already did. Impasto, you can kind of see it from the side, and palette knife actually, end up making really thick paint. That's what impasto means. It's a thick application of paint. So when I'm using my paintbrush, I'm still not loading up my paintbrush all the way over here, but I am a very thick application. So I'm just going to very thickly apply my paint so that you actually see, I kind of call it like little mountains. You see the texture of the paint. It is 3-dimensional. It is popping off the paper like so. Palette knife. We might have some of these around the room. You can also use a popsicle stick for a palette knife. A palette knife is basically, you still only want to work with the tip. This is more to smush the paint, but I just kind of take a little bit of the paint and I put it down. So you can just leave it dabbed like that, and you can apply the paint really super thick like that. Another thing that you can do with the palette knife is you can actually scrape the paint. So you put the paint down, and using this longer part of the paint, the palette knife, you can kind of squeegee it down, and it creates a kind of swiped look. All right, scaricito. What you need to do for that is you need to paint your whole square, whatever colors you want. So I'm just going to kind of do a mixture of both of mine. And then while the paint is still wet, take the end of your brush and drag it through. And you are literally scraping through the paint to reveal the white paper that's underneath. Okay, the next technique is splatter. So in order for splatter to happen, number one, you need to make sure that you put newspaper or something down at your table so that you don't make the tables a hot mess. And then what you need to do is you need to water down your paint. So I'm going to, again, take some water, put some of my blue in there, make sure it's fully incorporated, and then just have a little bit on the tip of my brush. And I'm going to use a flicking motion to flick the paint onto the paper. There's no reason for you to like fling paint across. That's how you get it on your neighbor, so don't do that. Dabbing. Dabbing is sort of similar to impasto, but you end up getting a really nice blurred effect, and you are you're pushing and smushing. Instead of just applying it like here, you actually are going to see it super smushed into the paper. And I'm just going to kind of work the blue, and then I'm going to go ahead and with some white and mix it in. And I'm going to try not to leave any thick points. So it's just about me dabbing, 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 dabbing. Sometimes people do this with paper towel too. They take like a little corner of their paper towel like this, and they just kind of pick it up and put it down to create a really soft but yet textured effect. With a dual-loaded brush, you're going to have your pile of blue, or whatever your color one is. I'm going to have my second pile, which is kind of turned into a light blue, which is fine. Let me actually mix it to a light blue. I'm going to put it right next to that original blue. I'm going to get my brush nice and clean, nice and dry. And then I'm going to start to kind of pull on my palette between the two colors. So you'll see that I have blue right next to the light blue, and I'm going to move a little to the right. These are micro movements, and a little to the left. You can't flip your brush over because that'll make it opposite. So you could do this, flip your brush vertically, but don't flip your brush horizontally. So I could do one of these. So I want to keep the blue on the left, the dark blue on the left, the light blue on the right. And then when I paint with it, ooh. So now you have learned 9 different techniques, and it is time to put your stuff away. So this paper needs to go on the drying rack. Make sure that your name is on it. This paper towel for cleanup is very simple. You just kind of wrap it up in a nice little crumble, and you throw it away in the trash. Make sure that you fully clean your brush. This is really easy since you guys have the mugs at the seats. Again, swish, swipe, and wipe. And the way that we'd like the brushes to be put away is for the bristles to be up. If you put the bristles down, they're going to get really angry, so please put the bristles up. And just make sure that your station looks really nice. If you happen to make a mess, please get a wet paper towel and clean it up. Palette knives are super simple to clean. I just get them wet and wipe them on a paper towel. We hope that you enjoy painting with acrylic paint. Woo woo!